Hello, and welcome again to our complete Angular 7 step-by-step user CRUD with Java 8 REST MongoDB 2019 tutorial. In this part of the tutorial, we're gonna generate all our components and services and guards and utilities needed for this user Angular 7 project. And then at the end of that creation or generation, then we're gonna build the first component, which is gonna be the sign-in login form. But we're only going to build the component TypeScript file. We're not going to build the HTML form. So when we are done with this section, you should see your user Angular project should have this kind of project structure with models. The most important one being user, and then with all these pages, footers, headers, login, and with the first part of the login sign-in component built completely in this section. And then we have the user section, which has add, edit, list. These are not going to be implemented in this part of the tutorial. We're also going to generate services, auth for authentication, and then user for all user services, including listing users, editing, and adding users, and deleting users too. Then we're going to also generate two utilities, auth guard for guarding the pages that are private pages. Basically, if you're not logged in and you try to go to list user page, then the auth guard is going to use the auth service to redirect you to the sign-in component. And as usual, this is inside our user app module. So when we're done, we'll have the component part, the back end of this, not the back end, I'll say the middle tier of this done, so that it'll prepare us to build the HTML file in the next part of the tutorial. So without any more delay, let's get started. Hello again, and welcome to this section of the tutorial. In this section, we're just going to install all the components and classes that we need to use for this user project. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and build the first screen, which is going to be the login sign-in screen. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to bring up my IDE again. And then, so we're going to install several classes. I mean, not several classes, but first we're going to generate just the classes. So our project is basically going to look like this, where we're going to have, so this is a project. We have a source app. We're going to generate these three models. So the user model, and the user is going to have gender. So that's why we have this gender class. And referential data, we're going to use it to, for drop-down list. And I'll show you how that works. So after that, we're going to create the pages, the footer, the header, and then we're just going to create the login section, the sign in, and then I'll show you how to do that. So let's get started. First, let's build the models. So to build the models, you just need to, again, we're in PowerShell 2, we're going to run the command ng generate class. And then I'm going to put it in a folder called model. And I'll say referential data. And I'll say the type here is model. And what's going to happen is that up here we're going to have a folder called model, where we're going to create a class called ref data. So let's go ahead and run that command. Okay, so as you can see, we have a folder here called model, and we have a ref data. I'm going to do the same thing for the next two classes, which is gender and user. So for that, just to shorten the time, I'm just going to copy and paste, run it. And so we're doing it basically the same way we did. So we're going to have over here gender, and then we're going to have user. So gender is over there, and we do the other one, just the user. So we're going to have the user class over here. And then after that, we're going to go to the pages, and we're going to create the footer. And I'll show you how to do that, and then we'll do the others the same way. So the footer. So the footer, again, basically you just want to do ng. This time we're not generating a class, we're just going to say generate a component, and we're going to have a folder called page, which is all where the pages are. We're going to call this page footer. Again, we're going to do spec is false. That way we're not going to have, like, you know, the testing class, which, because we're not doing any testing. And then we're going to do the command S, which will eliminate the CSS file, because we're using the styles file over here instead of like all the style files. So we don't want like a class like this app component CSS created in here called footer CSS, because we're using the styles CSS. So I'm going to issue that command S, and then I'm going to say module is equals to app. Most of the time you don't have to say this, but when you have an application that has a lot of modules, it's good practice to just say that. That means that whatever is created, this component is going to be tied to this app module, and I'll show you when that happens. So let's go ahead and create it. And you're going to see a new folder here called page. Inside the page is going to be footer, and footer is going to have HTML component, and I'm going to do the rest the same way. So there you go. We're going to create the header because we already have the footer. So there comes the header. I'm going to do the same for the login page. So under page over here, there's going to be a login folder, which is going to have a sign in over here. And let's, while we're there, we're not building it right now, but let's just create the sign up. It's going to go like that. So under here, there's going to be a sign up, which is also going to have. So sign up is especially your registration page. So if you're a user and you try to log in and you can't log in and you want to create your own, then you'd sign up. Let's go ahead and generate this user. So on the page over here, now we're going to have user, and we're going to have three functionalities: adding, editing, and listing. So there goes our page user. So we have add user. So we're just going to do the same command and change this to edit. So we're going to create add user, edit user. And then finally, we're going to have same thing, but this is going to be list user. Okay. And after the user pages, now we're going to create the services. Okay. Now, generating a service is slightly different command, and I'll show you. So you just do ng generate service, and I'm going to put it under service folder, and I'll call this off. Again, spec is equals to false, so we don't have testing classes because it's a tutorial demo. Module is equals to app, so it's going to go to the app folder. So that's the way we're going to generate the services. And like I told you, let me show you this command module app. It means that in this module here, it's going to add something called whatever service this is auth, is going to come in here and find a provider. Oh, it doesn't have it. Oh, we have to add it manually. But anyway, as you can see, all the things we've been creating here, edit, list, sign in, header, all those components are being added automatically in here. So that's the reason why we specify this app module. So let's generate the last service. We're just going to have two services, a user service and an auth, which is authentication service. Okay, and that is, there's one more thing we have to do. We need for authentication purposes, we need a guard. So to create a guard is almost the same command. We're just going to do ng generate This time around, we're going to say guard, and we're going to put it in the folder called util, and we're going to call it auth2. Again, spec false, so we won't have testing classes, and then the module is going to go to is app. So you can add it to this file, basically. That's why we're doing that. Did I do it? Oh, I will just complain. Okay, good. So that's done. So as you can see now, there's a utility class here called authGuard, and that's going to be very useful in authentication. It's going to basically guard the user against going into pages when they're not logged in. Okay, so let's do the last thing. So we're going to generate a class that we're also going to put it in the util. We're also going to put that class over here. It's a utility class that I'm going to call index. ng generate class util index. And that's all you have to do. Over here, there's going to be a util.ts TypeScript file. Okay, and that's it. We're done now creating our folder structure the way we want it to do. We have the models, we have user. Under here, we have our models, then we have our pages, and then we have our services, and we have our utilities. Okay, let's go ahead now and build the first page. Our first page is going to be the login page, sign in. So normally, good practice when I start writing classes, I start with a component. The first thing is we're going to create a login form. So I'm going to come here and say login, declare login form, and is of type form group. Okay. Now, if you start typing in something and the IDE doesn't find it, all you have to do is press Control, and while holding that, do period. Control period. It gives you suggestions. Now, this is very so you select Angular forms. That's where it comes from. As you can see, that dependency has been resolved. We're also going to create something here, another variable. I'm going to call it error message, which is of type any. It's mostly going to be a string, but I'm just going to call it type any. Anyway, and in the constructor here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do private form builder. Again, form builder is from the Angular forms, and whenever you see a suggestion like that, you can just push the button enter, and it imports whatever you entered in there. So we have a form builder. We need over here private router. Okay, again, that's the suggestion right there. I'm going to enter. And one more thing. I'm going to do private auth service, which is auth service. And it's from our own files, and so I imported that. That's done. Next, we're just going to say inside here, we're just going to say this login form is equals to this form builder group, and we do that. Okay, so now let's do this. In the group, we're going to have username, 2 fields, and this is going to be let's just do that. The other is password, and it's going to be the same way. Okay, so first, username is going to be a string, and so is this. Password is also going to be a string. So, and apart from being a string, we want to put some validation into it. So the way to do that, I'm going to put a comma here and create an array of validators. And I'll say the first validator is validators required. Okay, I want it required. Then validators, I want it minimum length. I want it to be 5 characters. Okay, and I want validators again. I want it to be an email. So the username is going to be an email. And it's going to be required maximum length 5. So let's just copy this thing here. We're going to use validators that are almost the same for this. We're not going to have it as email over here. So what we're going to do is that it's going to be required. Minimum length is going to be 5 and maximum length here. So validators max length is going to be let's make it 20 for now. Okay, so that's it for the form. Now I'm not going to do ng on init, so I'm going to delete this, and when I delete it, you're going to notice that this is going to be complaining because I'm implementing on init, and when you implement on init, you have to have a method called ng on init. I'm going to delete that too, and this dependency over here, I'm going to delete that too. So we're not doing on init at all. So then we're going to have a method called on login, which we're going to call when a user clicks login. We're going to call that from the page. So what we're going to do here is basically save this. Basically, we're going to log in the user once they click on that button. Okay, so on the way you do it, first you call the authentication service login. And so before we do this, let's just go to the authentication service and create a method called login. Okay, so to do that, in the services over here, I'm going to open authentication service, and I'm going to say, okay, so there's our service. I'm going to say in the constructor over here, I'm going to say private HTTP client and common Angular, that's the one I want. Okay. Okay. And then after that, I'm going to do private router, and that's the one I want. Okay, so, and this here is complaining because wants a space there. That's TS-lint, which I use. It can be annoying, but it's very good for programming, especially if you're working in a team. So the first thing over here actually is, so let's go ahead and create that method. Method is, I'm going to make it public, login. Okay. And then I'm going to just do that. So, and this, I wanted to take username, which is going to be a string. And then I also wanted to take password, which is going to be a string too. Okay. And so to do this one, the way we do this, we're going to say just return this.http.post. It's a post method, so it's basically going to call the HTTP service all the way to the backend, and I'll show you how that's done. So post basically takes in something called a user, okay? And user is from our model. So there you go. Now, first thing we're going to put in here is we're going to say this. Let's create one variable here first. The variable is going to be, I'm going to say private authentication URL as opposed to, I'm going to say just API login. That's our URL. Okay, we might have to change this a little. Actually, let's just change it right now because eventually that's what's gonna be. But to start with, we're gonna be accessing a server that's in the back end with another server through another port. So just for now, we're gonna do this. We're gonna remove this later when we go to production. HTTP localhost 8080. That's the port that I'm going to be using. API login, and I'll show you how to build this backend service. So it's going to say that, okay? And over here, I'm going to say this dot auth URL, okay? And you need to pass something else into the post method, and that's going to be I'm going to pass in. I'm going to say JSON stringify, and I'm going to pass it this. I'm going to say username, password. Okay, kind of like that. Okay, and then I'm going to say comma. I want to pass in HTTP options here. And the way, because I need to say that I'm passing kind of like JSON. So I'm gonna create a constant here for now. Say constant headers, okay? And I'm gonna say new HTTP headers, okay? And I'm just gonna say here, set content type, that's the header, set it to application JSON. That's all I need. Okay. I think we need one of those, right? Oh, I need a semicolon there. Actually, yeah, right there. Kind of like that. So I'm gonna say here headers, like that. Okay. Argument type has not assignable to a type parameter headers. Okay, great. That's fine. Let's do this. I'm gonna have a method here called get headers. Okay. And this is just gonna be and let's just say this. So I'm gonna say headers, HTTP headers, okay, like that. And I'm gonna do this. So function is to make the void. Okay, great. So we're gonna say a constant now here called HTTP options. I'm gonna call this that, and I'm gonna return HTTP options. Okay, let's build this options. This option thing, we're just gonna say same thing that we had said here, content type. Okay, the content type now we're gonna say is application JSON, just right there, kind of like that. And Missing in type content. Okay. So that's that. Oh, okay. So in here, I'm missing one thing. So I'm gonna say here headers new HTTP headers, and that's what I was supposed to do. Okay, and then now we can do this. So inside HTTP headers, we can do this. We can do that. Okay, and that's good. So if I do now get this get headers, now that's gonna look better. Okay, good. So that's why. So in here, I'm gonna do now the following. I'm gonna do a tab. I'll do pipe. Okay. And pipe has semicolon. And then inside here, I'm gonna do a tab. Let me do that. So tab is control period. Oh, doesn't have it. But basically, tab is actually sometimes this imports have a problem. So I'm gonna do just import two things. First thing is called tab, and then the other one is called catch error. And these ones come from RxJS operators. They both come from there. Okay. So we're going to do tap there. And what are we tapping? We're going to tap a user. Okay. I'm going to say user class. Okay. So, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'll say now I'll say if user, meaning once we send a post call to the backend, if it comes back with a user, if the call doesn't come back now, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. First, I'm going to say local storage. Okay. I'm going to set an item here, and this item is going to be, I'm going to call it access token, which is going to be a JWT token that will be generated from the backend, and I'll show you how that works. I'm going to say inside user, get a token. Okay. And what I'm going to do is with user, I need to build this class user, because as you can see, this is not. So let's go to our user class and build it first, because it doesn't have token, so that's why it's complaining. Basically, you need something like this string. So this is looking good, so that works. Okay, good. So when we come back here now, our token works. So let's continue building this first. Okay. So that's what I want. Okay, I want to get from the back end a user, and from the user they will have a variable called token, and that token is going to be the access token, which I'm going to put into the local storage. So the browser will be holding it temporarily, so that in case I reference it over there. Okay, so I'm going to say that that's done. Okay, that's it. Now if from the back end we have a problem and we don't return something, then I'm just going to say Okay, first of all here, I just want to say console.log. I'm going to say something like login failed for username is equal to, and this is wrong. I'm going to use this instead. I'll show you JavaScript notation. So I'm going to use that, and over here I'm going to pass a variable here. You have to do that, and then you have to do that. I'll say username with password. I'll say $, again, password. So that's how you do this thing. So, and let's okay, that's what it needs. Let's copy this over here, and we'll say, and I'll say login over here, logged in and username and not password successfully. I'll just say that. I'll say that. So that's all we need to do. So now let's go back to our sign-in component and writing the login. First, let's just implement logout here before we get out of here. So for the logout, we're just going to have that. We're going to say, again, local storage, remove item. And this item is just going to be this access token. So if we fail, I mean, when just to log out, that's what we do. We remove that, and then we're going to say this, the router, the navigate, and where are we going to go to? We're going to go to sign in, and I'll show you how that is done. So basically, logout just does that. It takes you out of here and then goes there, and yeah, that's all you got to do with this one. Okay. So for logging out, that's what we do. Great. Okay, let's go to the sign in component here. Now we're gonna implement the login method in this. So on login, we're just gonna say this, that authentication service, the one that we just worked on the login method, we're gonna do the following. Okay, we're gonna say this dot login form dot controls, and in the control we're gonna call username first. Okay, dot value, and then we're going to say this dot login form dot controls, and inside the controls again we're going to pass in password value. Okay, so that's what we're passing in here. Okay, and what we're doing after we pass that in is just to say subscribe now. Okay, and so subscribe, we're going to say user here. Let me say this actually. User is of type user. Okay. I'm gonna say that. Okay. And I'm gonna say, so this user here again, I'm gonna do control period, which is gonna give me that. Okay. I'm gonna go over here to the user and I'm saying if user, meaning if something was returned, if this is not null or if it's not undefined, this is what I want to do. Okay. I want to say, first of all, let's have, I'll say this dot error message. Okay. No, actually, I'll say the error method in authentication auth service dot error message, and it's not there. So let's have an error message inside here actually. Inside authentication service, I'm gonna have an error method here. Okay, so I'll say this dot error message is equals to null, and I'll show you why that is. In the authentication service, this service is used by, among other things, the user service. Whenever authentication fails in the user, we're going to pass a message in here and pass it to the front end. So that's why we're doing that. And I'll show you how to, when we're building the HTML, you'll see where these two error messages come in. So I want to say there's no authentication problem if a user has been returned. So, and then I'll say this dot router dot navigate, and I'm going to navigate to list user, which is the home page, kind of like we're going to the home page whenever, if it's successful. Okay. If something bad happens and we didn't get a user back from the back end, what we're going to do is to say this dot, again, authentication service dot error message is still going to be null. I don't want anything from there. I'm just going to have an error message here. Now it says this dot error message is equal to, I'm going to say username and or password do not match. Okay, that's the error message that's going to be displayed on the screen, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, and then now we're going to say this dot router navigate, and where are we going? We're going back to the login page with that error message. Okay, so I'm just going to say sign in. Okay, which is this page. It's just basically saying you hit this and something goes wrong, go back to the page and display this message. That's what I'm basically saying right there. So that's it for writing this. So now let's go to the HTML part of it and write it. Okay. Now, so all this is good. This is all good. I'm going to close all that, and I'm going to go now to the sign in component, this component right here. Okay. And first of all, before anything happens, on this home page here, I want to display the sign-in page. First of all, you can see there's no error, so that's good. So instead of this welcome, let's start building. So what we're gonna, in order to redirect this, what we have to do is that since we know very well that in here we have this, I'm just gonna comment everything else out here. And I'm also gonna comment out this over here. So that's gonna go away. Sorry. So everything's gonna be commented out. Now I'm gonna save it, and you'll see that on this page there'll be nothing now because everything has been commented out. So for now, there's no errors, there's nothing in there. Let's bring in something here. So to do that, this router, we're gonna go to app routing module over here, okay? And we're gonna add routes in here, okay? So let's add the routes. Okay, and to do that, this is what we're gonna do. First, we're gonna do I'm gonna define a path, and I'm gonna call this sign in. Okay, and this is gonna have a component called sign in component. That component there, we bring it in. Okay, another path sign up. Okay, component here is going to be sign up component. Okay, and now we start getting to the hard stuff. So over here, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do first, I'm going to do path, a blank path. That means that if the user types in a URL, we go over here and we type in a URL that is not correct. What's going to happen is that everything is going to be redirected. I'm going to say redirect to list user. Okay, and I'm going to do path match full. Okay, and then I'm going to do this one security thing. I'm going to say can activate. Okay, and this means that this page over here, list user, is restricted. So how is it restricted? If the user is not signed in, then we're going to do something. What are we going to do? I'm going to introduce this off guard that we have. Okay, so it's just basically saying use auth guard to restrict this page. And let's go to auth guard now and implement that, and I'll show you what that is. So in auth guard, as you can see, you don't need to do a lot here. Okay, all you do here is to say what is my authentication service? Auth service. I want to copy one thing here, access token. Okay, so in auth guard, all I'm going to say in auth guard, all I'm going to say is this. I'm going to say if local storage get item, and that's the item I'm looking for. Okay, if that exists, we're going to say return true. Okay, else what we're going to do is to say this dot router, and I'm going to come over here and create a constructor, and I'm going to say private router. Okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say if this dot router, navigate, and where are we going? Again, we're going to go to, this time around, we're going to go, first we're going to say we want to go to this place, sign in. That's where we want to go. Okay, but at the same time, I'm going to say, because I don't know where we are coming from, we could be coming from different pages, so I'm going to say query params. Okay, and this is going to be return URL. I'm going to say state, which is this state over here, dot URL. So what that does is that it says, whatever you're coming from whatever URL you're coming from, just first go to the sign in, and when you are signed in, return back to that page. That's what it's saying. So, and we're done with the auth guard. Okay, So let's go back to the routing. So in the routing, that's what that auth guard is going to do. If something is happening, it's coming over to the list user, and it finds that there is no variable called access token in local storage, then it's going to redirect us to this page sign in, which is where we need to go. Okay, let's continue writing the routes. So the other routes, so the rest of the routes is just 3 routes that we're going to do, and they're going to be all like kind of like this. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to change some things over here. I'm going to say I want to call the users now. So list user, and this is a good practice to do. If you go to list user, you'll find, actually I'm just going to call it list user. Okay, I'm going to call it list user. Okay, and the component is going to be list user component. And now I'll say don't go there unless you're logged in. So again, I'll say can activate, and this is going to be this auth guard right here. Kind of like that. You can do control period and bring in your list user component. So this is basically what we want to do. And this is going to be add user, and that's going to go to add user component, control period, there it is, and this is going to be edit user, and that's going to be from the edit user component, control period, and we're done configuring the routing. So okay, that's good. So injector, that's the problem. So sign in component form builder. So static platform, not for form builder. Okay, great. Several things. So the form builder in the sign in, that's a big problem. Okay, great. So let's do 2 things. First, in here, in our app material module, let's add something. Okay, we're gonna add mat form field module. Mat form field module. Again, once you import, you also have to export. Let's see if that is still a problem. And if that is a problem, then we're gonna need the following. If that is still a problem, then we need to do one more thing. When we did this form right here in the sign in, where's our sign in? Anyway, when we went into the sign in and we did this form, there's something you're supposed to do. Okay, you're supposed to go over to your module and import something called it's called, in the imports here, you're gonna say reactive forms module. Okay, that's the one. We save that there, and now it's thinking, and null injector for HTTP client. Okay, something else we're supposed to do. When we mentioned HTTP, which is inside our auth service right here, when we talked about this HTTP, that's connection to the backend, and we need over here in the app module, we need something else. we need to say another import HTTP client module. That's the module. And now we go back to our application. And now you can see everything works. So in AuthGuard, that goes to sign in and app routing. I bet you we could even do sign in, but list user. We'll change it if it doesn't work. So let's say it's sign in. Let's see. Okay, good. So now everything is good. It was just because of those errors. So what happens is that, so in here in AuthGuard, so we're going to come into list user. If you don't type in anything, it's going to come to list user. But then list user is guided by AuthGuard to say that if we don't have access token, then we are going to redirect to sign in, which is this form, right? So that's complete now. Hello, once again. So in this part of our tutorial, part 3, we were able to do some of the following. We generated our components. We generated services, guards, and utilities, and we built the sign-in user component TypeScript. In our next section, we're going to build the HTML4 for this component, but basically we were able to create that part, and we ended up with a project structure that looks kind of like this, where you have the models, you have the pages, including our footers, our headers, our login, and we build the first part, sign-in component TS. Now, in our next part of the tutorial, we're going to go to the component HTML. But and then we also build services, auth for authentication services, and user for all user services, including listing, editing, and adding. We also added some two utilities, AuthGuard for, and in this tutorial, we showed you how to implement the AuthGuard so that if a user who is not logged in tries to go to the list user, which is the home page, then the AuthGuard prevents them from going there, and using the auth service redirects them back to the sign-in component HTML. So that's it for now. If you like this tutorial and other tutorials, please click the subscribe button so you'll be notified of upcoming tutorials like this. Thank you, and we'll move on to the next part of the tutorial. Bye.